Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
The first birthday of my daughter Lily was meant to be soft and forgettable in all the right ways, like a warm breeze in June or the smell of cake that sticks to your fingers long after the last bite's been eaten. It was a backyard thing, nothing big, just a few family members and neighbors, mismatched folding chairs dug into the lawn, paper plates buckling under store-bought cupcakes, toddlers screaming without purpose. The kind of day you wouldn't write a poem about, but maybe you'd post a few grainy pictures online with a caption like "Can't believe she's won already," and move on. I had no intention of remembering it forever, at least not the way I do now. Lily was dressed in a pale yellow romper with a bumblebee stitched on the chest, one shoe missing within the first 20 minutes. My husband Rick stood beside me, holding her awkwardly as we sang "Happy Birthday" too slow, too loud. My sister Donna made a joke about our tone-deaf family, and everyone laughed a little too hard, because that's what we did. We overcompensated. The air smelled like plastic forks and citronella candles and burnt burgers. It should have been a good day. Then my mother arrived late, like always, carrying a present too large for the occasion, wrapped in metallic gold paper as if we were celebrating a royal coronation instead of a baby smearing frosting into her own eye socket. Eleanor never knew how to read a room, she only knew how to walk into one and rearrange the temperature. She kissed Lily on the head without really looking at her, then turned to me, smiling with her lips, but not her eyes. "You look tired," she said, just loud enough for Donna to hear. "Still carrying that baby weight, huh?" I laughed, short and automatic, because I'd spent my entire life trying not to flinch when she cut. Rick tried to shift the attention, asking if she wanted a burger or something to drink, but she waved him off like a fly. She was too busy scanning the party like she was inspecting a battlefield. The moment happened when we were trying to get Lily to blow out her single candle. Everyone was crowding around the little table, phones out, voices overlapping with fake excitement. I leaned in close, smiling, bracing Lily's little hand as she reached for the flame, when my mother leaned in too, her lips right by my ear, and said it. "She's going to grow up ugly. Like you." I didn't turn to look at her. I didn't even blink. I just froze there mid-smile, one hand on my daughter's tiny wrist, the other gripping my phone like it might explode. The candle flickered. Lily made a sound like a sneeze and the flame went out. Everyone clapped. The moment passed, but I didn't. Later that night, after Lily was asleep and the last of the frosting had been scraped off the patio, I sat on the couch scrolling through photos like I was looking for something specific. I didn't know what, not at first. Then I found it. It was blurry, overexposed. My face was tilted just slightly, my mouth caught in that weird half-smile you do when you're about to laugh, but something feels wrong. My mother was in the corner of the frame, just barely visible behind my shoulder. Her face was close to mine, lips twisted like a hook, eyes narrowed. She looked like a different woman. No one else in the photo seemed to notice her. They were all focused on Lily. But I saw it. I saw her. I sat there staring at the picture for too long. Rick came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands with a towel. Looking through the shots, he asked. "Yeah," I said, not moving. "That one's cute," he said, pointing to a picture where Lily had frosting in her hair. But I didn't show him the other one. I didn't say anything. I just saved it, quietly, and put it in a folder I titled Evidence. All caps. The thing about mothers like mine is, they make you question whether your memories are yours or hers. She had a way of twisting things until I wasn't sure if I was overreacting or just underhealing. But this time, I had proof. I had a snapshot of the exact second my brain said, "Enough?" That was the first picture I deleted her from. I opened my editing app, the kind teenagers use to smooth their skin and whiten their teeth, and I started small. I cropped her out. I erased her shadow. Then I moved to the group photos, backyard shots, the one where she's sitting by the grill, the one where she's holding Lily but not really holding her, arms stiff like the baby was made of knives. Delete. Crop. Paint over. It became addicting. Like cleaning a wound you didn't realize was still bleeding. The next day, I printed 10 of my favorite pictures and hung them in Lily's nursery. Every single one of them beautiful, bright, joyful, and completely absent of Eleanor. Donna texted me a few days later. "Hey, where's the pic of Mom holding Lily? The one from the cake." "Didn't come out," I replied. Which was technically true. That night, I dreamt of a family portrait, but every time I tried to smile, my mother would lean in, whisper something, and my face would collapse like wet paper. I woke up with a decision burning in my chest. I wasn't going to let Lily grow up hearing the same poison I did. I wasn't going to wait for the next party, the next photo, the next whispered insult disguised as truth. I wasn't going to let my mother write herself into my daughter's story the same way she wrote herself into mine, with a sharp tongue and a crooked smile. And if she didn't want to love Lily right, then she wouldn't love her at all. I picked up my phone and started going through every album, every memory, every place my mother had ever touched in digital form. And I began to erase her. Picture by picture, word by word, memory by memory. Because sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet deletion. And that's only where I started. There's a difference between forgetting someone and deciding they don't deserve to be remembered, and I didn't understand that fully until I stood in my laundry room, folding a pair of baby socks that didn't even match, and thought about how my mother used to call me thick around the middle when I was 12. Not with malice, at least not the kind most people could see, but with that slight tilt of her voice, like she was diagnosing a problem she thought would only get worse. And she wasn't wrong, it did. Not the weight, but the way I carried myself. By 16, she had upgraded the insult. Plain, she'd say, sometimes in passing, sometimes mid-conversation, as if she was doing me a favor by speaking it aloud before someone else could. I remember brushing my hair one night before prom, holding the curling iron too long on one strand until it sizzled, and hearing her through the cracked door say, "She's just forgettable. Maybe it's the eyes." As if I wasn't right there. As if I wasn't trying to erase myself faster than she ever could. At 22, I told her I wanted to move across the country, start over, maybe go to grad school. She didn't flinch. She just muttered, "You were probably a mistake, anyway," like she was reading it off a grocery list. I didn't cry. I just nodded, because what else do you do when someone hands you a truth like that? You either let it settle into your bones, or you spit it out before it sticks. I let it settle. For years. But now I had Lily. And something about becoming a mother makes you either want to protect your child from the world or introduce her to it piece by painful piece. I chose protection because I knew exactly how sharp that first cut can be, and I would rather her be naive than quietly bleeding before she even learns to speak. So I went deeper than photos. I pulled out the old flash drives, the cloud backups, the printed albums buried in drawers I hadn't opened in years. There she was, my mother, Eleanor, posing next to me at my wedding, standing with a tight-lipped smirk like she was watching a slow-motion disaster. I opened the image in an editor and carefully painted her out. It took 10 minutes. 10 minutes to undo decades of her standing too close to me, holding me like she was allergic to warmth. Gone. I stared at the photo afterward, the space where she had been now filled with light and air. It looked better without her. Then I moved on to Christmas from 3 years ago, the one where she told me Lily would probably be born cross-eyed if I didn't ease off the salt. She'd said it with a laugh, fork halfway to her mouth. I'd nodded, too tired to fight. Now she was gone from the background of that photo, replaced by the glow of the tree and Donna's toddler throwing a plastic ornament at the cat. I deleted her from 24 photos total, which is wild considering we only had 13 guests at the party. But she managed to insert herself everywhere, like she was making sure no moment existed that didn't involve her. Donna noticed first. She texted me 2 days after I posted the edited album online. "Where's Mom in these pics? Did she leave early?" I typed and deleted my response 3 times before I landed on, She must have stepped out when those were taken. Technically not a lie. Spiritually, maybe. Rick noticed next. He didn't say anything right away, just gave me that slow, careful look he reserves for moments when he's not sure whether to hug me or recommend therapy. Finally, over dinner, he asked, "Are you sure this is the road you want to go down?" I looked at Lily, cheeks full of mashed peas, face smeared with joy and innocence, and said, "I'm already halfway there." What I didn't say was this. If I had a time machine, I wouldn't go back to stop myself from doing this. I'd go back further and erase Eleanor from every birthday, every dance recital, every time I stood in front of a mirror and hated what I saw because she'd handed me the language for that hate. Late that night, while scrolling through my phone in the dark, I saw the message notification pop up. One line, no greeting. "Why am I blocked from your daughter's baby album?" I stared at it so long my screen dimmed. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She knew why. She just didn't want to say it. And if I'm being honest, part of me was waiting to see if she'd send a second message or maybe call or maybe even show up again, acting like none of this happened, pretending like I was the dramatic one, like I always misunderstood her. Like her words were never daggers, just harmless little observations. But she didn't follow up. She didn't push. Because somewhere deep inside her bitter little chest, she must have known. This time, I wasn't flinching. This time, I was cutting. And this time, she wasn't coming back. There's a kind of revenge that doesn't come with broken glass or raised voices, that doesn't leave bruises or ripped clothes or tire marks in a driveway. It comes slow, like poison in a cup of tea, something that tastes almost sweet before it makes you sick. And when it's done right, no one can even trace it back to you. That's how I started handling my mother, like a quiet infection I was finally treating after years of pretending I wasn't sick. It started with the pictures, yes, but it didn't end there. Removing her face from the photographs was only the surface. Underneath that surface, the rot was still threaded through everything she had touched. And I wasn't done pulling it out yet. First, I blocked her from the family calendar Rick, and I used to keep track of birthdays, appointments, preschool visits, doctor checkups, and holidays. I removed her email from the invite list, deleted the events she'd been invited to in the past, wiped her presence from the recurring reminders. Then I changed the location of Lily's daycare picnic and sent the new info only to people I trusted not to forward it. When Donna asked why the address changed, I said they had plumbing issues, and that was enough to satisfy her. Nobody questions logistics when it comes to babies. Everyone just assumes the mess belongs to someone else. Rick was watching me out of the corner of his eye more and more, the way a man watches a woman who started carrying a knife, not sure if she's defending herself or planning something worse. One night, after Lily was asleep and I was sitting on the couch editing another old photo, he asked me, "Are you gonna tell her?" I didn't look up from my screen. Tell who what? He gave me that tired look I'd come to expect, the one that said, "Don't play dumb, Jenna, not with me." So I closed my laptop and met his eyes. "Are you going to tell your mother why you're cutting her out of everything?" I didn't answer right away because there was too much to say, and none of it would land the way I needed it to. So I just shook my head. "She doesn't deserve closure," I finally said. "She never gave me any." And that was the truest sentence I had spoken out loud in months. I didn't get closure when she told me I was prettier before my teeth came in. I was 10, standing in our hallway with a new pink dress on, smiling big because I finally had something with sleeves that weren't stretched out hand-me-downs. She looked at me and said, "You used to be cute before those teeth." Like I was some ruined doll she didn't want anymore. I didn't get closure when she laughed at me for crying at my own graduation, or when she told me no man would ever marry someone so sensitive. And I damn sure didn't get closure when she said Lily was going to grow up ugly like me. So no, she wasn't getting a courtesy phone call. She wasn't getting a formal announcement. She would figure it out like the rest of the world, through absence. But absence has a weight all its own. It fills the room like smoke, slow and invisible at first, then choking once you realize you waited too long to move. She must have felt it too, because less than a week after I shut her out of the picnic, she showed up on my doorstep. It was a Thursday, late afternoon, the light already going soft, the smell of sun-warmed mulch rising off the flower beds I hadn't touched since spring. Lily was playing with a bucket of toy blocks on the floor, humming to herself in that sweet nonsense language that toddlers speak before words make sense. And then the doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I opened it. Eleanor stood there holding a gift bag that looked like it came from the overpriced boutique downtown, the kind with shiny handles and ribbons instead of tissue paper. She wore that frozen half-smile she used when she wanted to appear warm but didn't have it in her. And I'll say this for her, she didn't open with a question, or an apology, or even a joke. She just said, "Thought I'd drop by." For Lily. I stood in the doorway and didn't step aside. I wasn't going to make this easy. Inside, Lily stopped humming. She looked up, then toward the door, then back down again like something in her little brain didn't quite match. Eventually, I let Eleanor step inside, more out of morbid curiosity than grace. She tried to approach Lily slowly, crouching near her, holding out the bag like some twisted fairy godmother, handing out curses disguised as candy. But Lily didn't move toward her. She didn't even smile. She looked at Eleanor for a few long seconds, then turned back to her blocks and picked up the green one like the moment had already ended. I watched my mother's face twitch in confusion, the corners of her lips sagging just slightly, not enough for most people to notice, but I knew every crease in that face, every crack in her armor. She was waiting for Lily to come closer. For that instinctive childlike need to reach out to a familiar adult. But it never came. And in that moment, something sharp and final clicked into place. Because even babies know when love's not real. I took the gift bag from her hand without a word, set it on the table without even looking inside, and said the only sentence that needed to be said. "I think it's time you left." She didn't argue. She didn't yell. She just nodded once and turned around, her heels clicking against the hardwood as she walked out of the house like she had somewhere more important to be. But she didn't. Not anymore. Because I wasn't burning this house down with her in it. I was just making sure she never had a key again. I always thought if anyone was going to side with me, really stand up and say, "Yeah, she did that." I saw it too. She said those things, it would be my sister. Donna was the one who lived it with me, grew up in the same cramped house with the same suffocating rules and the same cold silences that stretched longer than they ever should have. She was there when our mother called me dramatic for crying at Dad's funeral and then pulled her into the kitchen to whisper, "Thank God it wasn't you, sweetheart. I couldn't handle that." She was there when Eleanor would tear down my appearance and then turn to Donna with a smile so warm you'd think it came from someone else's mouth entirely. We used to joke about it in our 20s, sitting on the floor of my apartment with cheap wine and takeout, calling her Jekyll and Mom when we were brave enough to laugh. But we never went deeper. We never asked why Donna got the gold and I got the gravel. So when she finally texted, "Can we talk?" I knew it was coming. The guilt, the confusion, the "maybe you're taking this a little too far." And even though I'd prepared myself for it, I still felt that knot twist in my stomach, the same one I used to get when I was a kid and heard Eleanor call my name from another room with that tone that made you wonder if you'd done something wrong even when you hadn't. Donna showed up with coffee in her hand and that tight look on her face, like she was trying not to frown but couldn't quite manage it. She didn't sit down right away, just hovered by the kitchen counter like she wasn't sure she wanted to stay long. I waited for her to speak first because I knew how this worked. She needed to feel in control of the narrative. "You've been editing her out of everything," she said finally, the words careful and slow, like she thought if she softened them enough I might not notice they were laced with judgment. I nodded and leaned back against the wall. "Yeah, I have." She hesitated, then added, "Isn't that a bit much?" That was the moment I decided to show her the photo. I had kept it, printed it, even though I told myself I was done keeping any piece of Eleanor around. But this one wasn't for her, it was for proof. I handed it to Donna across the table. It was the same picture from Lily's birthday, the one where everyone else was clapping and laughing and Eleanor was leaning into my ear, her mouth twisted like she was spitting a secret that tasted bitter coming out. She said Lily would grow up ugly, I told Donna flatly. Like me. Donna looked down at the photo and didn't speak for a long time. I watched her eyes skim the edges, the faces, the frozen moment of me mid-smile with my body going stiff. I waited for the denial, the deflection, the you must have misheard her. But it didn't come, not right away. Instead, she said, almost too quietly, I thought you looked happy in this one. I shook my head, slow and tired. Do you really think I was? She didn't answer. That silence cracked something in her. Not completely. Not enough to rebuild trust on. But enough to let in the possibility that I hadn't been making it up. That maybe all those years I was accused of being the sensitive one, the fragile one, the one with too much emotion and too little humor, that maybe I was just the one telling the truth too early for anyone to believe it. And then the bomb dropped. That night, Eleanor posted on Facebook. Not a private message. Not a phone call. A public status for all her friends, neighbors, old church ladies, former coworkers, and barely active high school acquaintances to see. It read, My daughter has poisoned my relationship with my granddaughter. Pray for me during this painful time. Some people don't know what family means until it's too late. It got shared 17 times in the first hour. People started commenting, sending her hugs and prayers and stories of their own kids turning cold or becoming entitled and cruel. A few of them even mentioned forgiveness. One woman wrote, You're still her mother. Don't give up on her yet. I read it all in stunned silence, sitting in my kitchen with the lights off and the glow of my phone burning into my eyes. My hands shook with a mixture of rage and shame and something I couldn't quite name, something like grief, maybe, for the tiny part of me that still wished she'd someday say, I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. But she never would. Instead, she went nuclear. I thought about letting the post sit there, unanswered. Letting her drown in her own martyrdom while I stayed silent. But then I realized silence was what had kept me chained for so damn long. Silence was the language she spoke best, saying nothing after cruel comments, pretending memory didn't exist when it was inconvenient, expecting me to swallow every insult like communion. So I broke that silence with one comment. Just one. You should pray for the woman in that photo, I wrote under her post. She doesn't exist anymore. By morning, it had over 200 comments. Some of them supported her. Some of them supported me. But the ones that cut the deepest were the ones asking, what really happened? Because for once, she didn't control the story. And in that space of uncertainty, in that vacuum of carefully constructed lies, something shifted. Because maybe people didn't need to know everything. Maybe it was enough that she finally didn't get to be the only one speaking. There's a strange kind of silence that comes after the last confrontation, when the yelling is done, the social media dust has settled, and the door you closed behind someone doesn't rattle anymore, not because they've stopped pushing, but because they finally gave up. That's the silence I woke up to one Thursday morning, a cup of coffee in one hand, Lily crawling across the living room rug in her footy pajamas, her mouth chewing something invisible, her little fingers smacking against blocks that no longer lit up like they used to. The world felt quieter, not peaceful exactly, but hollowed out in a way I hadn't experienced before. It was the kind of quiet you get when you've gutted the house and the floors still echo from what used to live there. I had been thinking about the baby book for months, ever since Eleanor showed up with that gift bag and Lily turned away like her body already knew not to let the poison in. Something clicked in me that day, something fundamental and final. It wasn't just about removing my mother from the present. It was about denying her entry into the future, making sure her shadow never made it past the threshold of Lily's memory. Because children remember more than we think. They remember the tone of voices, the tightness in their mother's jaw, the way hands clench when the phone rings. I remembered. I remembered everything. And I wasn't going to let Lily inherit that archive of harm. So I started writing it by hand, which felt old-fashioned and sacred in a way typing never did. A baby book, not the kind you buy at the store with pastel pages and gendered prompts, but one I made myself, brown leather, thick paper, stitched binding. I wrote out the story of Lily's birth, the way her fingers curled around my thumb like she knew exactly who I was, the first time she laughed at the dog's tail, how she liked sweet potatoes, but not carrots. I wrote about Rick building her crib in the middle of the night while cursing under his breath, and how we argued about whether or not to play white noise while she slept. But I didn't write about Eleanor. Not once. Not as a footnote, not as a background character, not as a name scribbled under visitors or gifts. She was a ghost, and ghosts don't belong in baby books. Each page was a small rebellion. Each line of ink was a way of saying, "You don't get to live here anymore." Rick watched me work on it in silence. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer suggestions. One night, he walked over, took the finished book from my hands, and gently placed it on the shelf above Lily's changing table like it was something holy. And maybe it was. The next morning, Lily toddled over to that shelf and pointed at it with one chubby finger. She looked at me, her eyes wide and curious, and said her first real sentence. Not a word. A sentence. Nana gone. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, bent down to her level, and said, "Yeah, baby. She is." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't even bitter. It was the truth, the simplest kind, the kind that doesn't need a story to hold it up. Because it wasn't just that Eleanor had disappeared from our lives. It was that I had made sure she couldn't come back as a whisper, as a warped memory, as a ghost pretending to be family. I didn't kill my mother. I just erased the idea of her. For a while, that was enough. The peace settled in around us like dust on a windowsill. Rick and I started sleeping better. Donna kept her distance, unsure whether to lean into the silence or confront it. I didn't push her either way. The absence of Eleanor gave me more room to breathe, and I wasn't in any rush to fill that space with old guilt or half-reconciled relationships. But 6 months later, a letter came. No return address. No postmark I recognized. Just my name on the envelope in handwriting I hadn't seen in years, not since she used to sign my permission slips with a looped and impatient scrawl. I thought about burning it. I even held it over the sink for a moment, trying to feel whether it was heavy enough to carry more than paper. But I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Me, at 13. No makeup. Bad braces. A too-big t-shirt and stringy hair pulled into a ponytail. I was smiling, not a forced smile, but one of those real, awkward, hopeful ones, like I thought the person holding the camera might actually love me. On the back, she'd written just one line. "You were never ugly." I just didn't know how to love pretty things. No apology. No explanation. Just that sentence. A confession wrapped in cowardice. A truth too late to matter and too early to forgive. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not because I missed her. Not because I believed she'd changed. But because I wanted to remember the girl in that picture. I wanted to remember that even back then, despite all of it, I still believed I was worth capturing. Worth seeing. I didn't write back. I didn't call. I didn't post a response. But I didn't throw the photo away either. I kept it. Not for her. For me. To remember what I survived.